Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Guess what? It is once again that time of the week. And what time of the week is it? Well, it is that time every week where we get together and we dig underneath the headlines. We figure out the real nitty-gritty, the real hard truth, TRUF. Figure out what the mainstream media isn't really telling all of us about, and generally call out the establishment's BS. It is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 FM, WIDR Kalamazoo. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM, WIDR Kalamazoo, or Western Michigan University. So, still waiting for a couple of my co-hosts to come on, but there's a couple of quick things that I wanted to talk about and address. Last night was the Heather Heyer Memorial, and what that was is several places across the country, but most primarily in Charlottesville. A lot of demonstrators and mourners from all stripes of life got together to mourn and celebrate the life of Heather Heyer. And for those of you who maybe that name escapes you, that was the young woman who was killed in the what would you even call it, like a battle, the white supremacist rallies in Charlottesville. That happened just about a year ago. And as I'm sure all my listeners are aware, it was a very big story, and it's still very much a part of the national psyche. She was run over by a white supremacist from Ohio, and this was after the anti-fascist contingent, which was a broad coalition of both nonviolent, peacefully but armed, and of course the actual anti-fascists who Cornel West, among several others, credits with saving the lives of nonviolent protesters by basically providing physical defense against the white supremacists and the Nazis who were more or less charging them. And if you recall the first night, and I remember kind of watching this happen. You remember how outnumbered the small response contingent was, the counter demonstrations to the white supremacists. And this was largely because the white supremacists kind of changed their plans at the last minute, and they organized in such a way to turn against a really strong counter protest, and they got the absolute crap kicked out of them. But then the next day happened, and a wave of resistance washed upon all of their cracker asses. And the anti-fascists won the day. Then, of course, one particular Nazi with a lot of sour grapes took the life of one of our own. So, just want to say on this, the birthday of Heather Heyer, rest in power. And thank you for what you've done. So I'm gonna go ahead on that kind of dour note. I'm gonna go ahead and let my co-host in, and we can start breaking into some other topics. Just a moment.
Snake
ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and yeah, it's funny. I was just talking a little bit about anti-fascism. Well, specifically the anniversary. So Heather Heyer's birthday was last night, and there was people gathered in Charlottesville, and I was talking a little bit about that, but Luke just came in, said somebody was trying to pick a fight with him on the internet, which is not too untypical, particularly these very heated times. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, had the wrong mic. All right. Speak.
Speak. Maybe it's 3.
Speak. There we go.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where these times, they're politically charged, things get heated and whatnot, but it's if you're telling somebody that you'll only respect their opinion if they can back it up with their fists, I think that says a lot about you and what it takes for you to accept new ideas. And I actually think less of you if you do that. But at the same time, if I disagree with you and you don't really respect my opinion unless I will fight you over it, by all means, I will fight you over it. Come catch these hands.
I don't think they're really used to like that kind of response. It's like, all right, sir, let's meet at dawn in the town square. Like, would they actually show up? I don't know. I'd say most of them probably wouldn't.
I'm not really a violent person by nature. But at the same time, like, I'm hot-headed. Things have gotten heated before with me. It's terrible. I don't advocate strict use of violence, everybody. That's terrible. You should talk it out. Diplomacy first, to diplomacy second, diplomacy a third time.
Well, I almost say like you should your use of violence should be quite strict, as a matter of fact.
But at the same time, like if they will, as my good inspiration, Malcolm Reynolds from Firefly said once, if someone tries to kill you, you try to kill them right back. You know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
so actually I did want to start with some interesting news that is on the good side, and
good news is always great news.
Actually, I should have reached out to him about this. John Hoadley put through some legislation that is that actually do be good for the LGBT community, and what it would do. This is in the state legislature. And I'm sorry, I don't think I sent this to you guys. I'm sorry.
You sure didn't.
Ah, dang. All right. Well,
so you can just go and
okay. And yeah. All right. So, I'm reading off of the news brief on Channel 3, and I literally just found the story last night while I was at work. But Cody Combs wrote it yesterday. This is on the Channel 3 website. But I'll read a little bit from the article, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. A new set of proposed bills would change the current penalty for failing to disclose HIV before sex from a felony to a misdemeanor, and require proof that an individual actually contracted HIV as a result of having sex with someone HIV positive. Introduced by Michigan Representative John Hoadley, and that's House Bill number 6020. It's one of several bills seeking to change and update state HIV laws. Over at the Kalamazoo Community AIDS Resource and Education Service, Director Kelly Doyle says the changes Michigan HIV disclosure laws are long overdue. We've seen with this current law, people go to jail even though they disclose their status, she said. Doyle referred to what she described as a he said, she said scenario, where sometimes revenge is the main factor in claiming someone didn't disclose HIV. It's like, how do you prove that someone disclosed their status? She said. Doyle also said the current Michigan law actually creates incentives to not get tested for HIV. With the current laws, it's take the test and risk arrest, she said. And what that means is, like, if you don't know that you have HIV, and God forbid you ends up transmitting it, if you don't legally or technically know about your diagnosis, that keeps you from getting into legal trouble. So there's this kind of again, it's what she's describing is almost like a legal fear or stumbling block to keep people from getting themselves tested for a very important and unfortunate ailment. So Ting goes on to quote Hoadley specifically, and he said, "It does not treat someone differently who's doing everything they can to prevent the practical means of transmission with HIV," he said. Hoadley also said the Michigan law was stuck in the past, failing to take into account medical advancements. If we can measure someone's viral load, excuse me. If we can measure someone's viral load, the amount of HIV in someone's body, and we can get it to undetectable levels, they are unable to transmit HIV to someone else. He also emphasized the need to add intent language to current Michigan law, meaning there would have to be proof that someone purposely sought to transmit HIV. So, kind of like deconstructing this a little bit. When a lot of this original legislation, I guess that's legislation that happened during the Reagan years. Just mushing my words together.
It's a good one, though. I like that.
But a lot of this legislation that they're talking about fixing and bringing up to date, these were passed during the Reagan years, right in the middle of the gay panic. And it's similar, in a lot of ways to, the kind of scaremongering you might see against immigrants or Muslims. But these laws were tailored to this idea that there are these, gay predators just going around just giving people HIV, on purpose. That's their modus operandi. There's some kind of sick serial transmitter of some sort. There were a couple of freak cases back in the 80s, and it's almost like how you remember that classic story of the Satanists who owned all the daycare centers. It's they take one or two of these kind of freak stories and try to paint it into a national phenomenon, or take a very small subset and use it to paint a broader picture of a larger population. MS-13.
This one group of teenagers playing this game called Dungeons and Dragons got really into their props. And their parents walked in one day and saw satanic symbols everywhere as they were playing out the entry scene to just before the heroes burst in and saved Dungeons and Dragons is corrupting our children. It's demons and Satan and everything is bad. Stop.
Yeah, that was my dad.
Stop.
Dungeons and Dragons. The rest of my family would play it on Christmas Eve, and he's like, "Don't go in the dining room. They're practicing witchcraft."
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty curious.
It's funny to me because it's the same thing that white folks were saying about black culture and black society and Native Americans and everything else that they use to scapegoat in America. To subjugate, fearmonger, and to profit from said ideas.
Yeah.
So it's another day in America. That's this is America.
And there's another day in Michigan too. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the legislature, because the composition of the Michigan House, it's majority Republican, but there's a lot of there are a lot of kind of libertarian leaning Republicans in that mix as well. A lot of them who kind of abide by that whole Rick Snyder line of conservative but not necessarily super religious. But I don't know. I think I should I'll try to hit up John Hoadley himself. Maybe we can get him on next week, because I'd like to kind of find out a little bit more about this, see where if it's going to end up going anywhere in the House. But just for those of you out there who know people in the HIV community, or even just communities that are at risk, this is something to really keep an eye on. The cultural stigma and the medical advancements have both been very drastic since the 1980s when the AIDS crisis was at its zenith here in the United States. And we've basically still got all of those old, very kind of draconian panic response laws that were enacted in the 80s. I'd say like a good analogy might be like how we still have the Patriot Act, even though even our own Department of Defense have said, the big threat right now are the big powers and not necessarily terrorism anymore. But
it's still a crisis. It's still a crisis overseas. It's still a crisis in Africa.
Oh yeah, sure is.
But you'll have evangelical Christians going over to countries that are still dealing with this epidemic and telling them not to use condoms or things of that nature. Like, there are multiple stories of fear mongering going on that still takes place. So we have to get educated. We have to start telling the truth. Things are not as scary as it seems, especially when it comes to today with modern medicine. And we have to educate people because people are not being educated.
And I think I'm glad you brought up like the whole. I touched a little bit on the religious angle of it, but you gotta keep in mind, like, even in modern America, as much I mentioned that like attitudes have changed, maybe like in the broader public, but there's still a large subset of conservatives, and particularly like conservative evangelicals, who like they view HIV as like a just punishment for like the behaviors of this particular population. So it's gross to think, but like to them a story like this is probably they would probably be shouting from the other side of it, saying like, why wouldn't we want to punish people extra for having like the gay plague or the gay disease or whatever?
I don't understand anyone who calls themselves a Christian who advocates for more punishment for doing eye for an eye style judgments, anything like that. Like, I don't get it.
Well,
let me explain.
I'll never understand.
There's a bunch of different sects of Christians, just like there's a bunch of different sects
of
what we would define as being liberal. As a big foreshadowing thing, we might have one of these kind of liberals here on the show coming up pretty soon. But
yep.
You have people who like to. The overwhelming thing is that people extract from the Bible their already preconceived notions, and they use that to justify their moral proclivities in one way or a form or another.
Oh, so it's working backwards from the conclusion.
Yeah, it really is. So a lot of people do this, and a lot of people, because in America, a lot of people were raised to do that. That's how they saw the world, and that's how they see the world. And when you are not challenged on said ideas, when you're not when new information is brought to you, you go back to what you know. If you go back to what you know, and what you know just happens to be this authoritarian type of model.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not saying all Christians are like this, because I'm a Christian, but there are people who are still stuck in their ways, even though there's more information or new information out there that may change the way that they perceive things. It's about the perception and the exception and the accepting of said perception when your initial view on things change.
Yeah, and I get, well, this is a little bit of a rabbit hole from where we started, but I think it's important to talk about because it's a really important topic. Especially, I think a lot of listeners of our show are either very like cynical or skeptical about you know, I mean, the kind of like, you know, the evangelical movement and stuff that we just described. And granted,
they took a loss. They took a loss this week.
Oh, they did.
Oh, they took a loss this week. R.I.P. Roseanne.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute too.
Do we have to?
I don't want to. I don't want to at all. I just want to say that gave me a very good laugh in some of the conversations that I've been having online with people about free speech, especially her free speech. And her free speech is not in any way, shape, or form in the same vein or parallel to other free speech, like the NFL protests.
I think everybody got a chip on hypocrisy bingo.
Man,
it's like I literally know a few people who's like, oh, why don't football men stand up? You know, and you're yelling about that, and then like there's like, I stand with Roseanne. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for showing us which kind of speech you support. Like it's something that's constant. I guess since we're talking about it, I'm going to talk about this.
Yeah.
It's something that I see consistently, and it's something that the YouTube channel ContraPoints addresses in one of their videos about the left and free speech. Is when you like free speech is free speech, and being a free speech absolutist about things is essentially being a free speech anarchist. Because no matter what you do within a community, you are going to have rules about what you can and cannot talk about without repercussion. Mm-hmm. It's just a thing. ContraPoints brings up 4chan as a great example of this, because 4chan is supposed to be this message board where you can post anything with no rules and no limits. But even 4chan, the board itself has rules and limiters on things you can post where, which is, you know, kind of weird when you start thinking about free speech absolutism.
Yeah.
The big thing about this, the chip in the hypocrisy bingo, when we start talking about the difference between Roseanne getting fired for racism and Kaepernick being blackballed for protest against injustice, is the fact that one of these things supports bigotry and hatred, and the other one is trying to right a social wrong. And defending one over the other really shows which one you actually support. So if you're going to sit here and defend Roseanne and her ability to say odious and racist things on the internet, which she has every right to do, she has every right to say these things, and I want her to say these things, and I want her to broadcast them, because I want her to broadcast a message that repulses as many people as possible.
I think too, like, you know, the right too often they conflate the idea of the First Amendment and freedom of speech with freedom from consequences from what you say.
So, like, freedom of speech means that the government can't come down on you and tell you, no, you can't say that, we're going to arrest you for saying that. There are consequences for you to say that. Like, that, all the First Amendment does is protect you from repercussions from the government. It doesn't protect you from repercussions from ABC. It doesn't protect you from repercussions from the NFL. It doesn't protect you from repercussions from society at large. It does none of that.
Lawrence,
here's the thing, and this is the one thing that makes me laugh every time we talk. I've talked about this or seen this. It's not like ABC didn't know what was going on. Oh, they wanted a slice of that racist pie. Mm-hmm. They wanted to make they wanted a slice of that racist pie and that racist money, and they got it. They got all of it and all the baggage that came with it. Well, let's not forget, back in 2013 or something, she said that one of President Obama's administrators was a big ape with balls or something, like big ape arms with balls. Mm-hmm. And we already knew that this is how she felt. Like, we already knew that she was 2 steps away from David Duke. That's not a punchline. That is not a joke. So the fact that you had Wanda Sykes on there leave before the show got canceled, and the fact that the head of MSNBC is a black woman, and you said a black woman this black woman was a ape and a terrorist, yes, you should have got fired. There's no job on planet Earth where you can call another person a ape and a terrorist and still keep your job.
And one last thing, and maybe we should take a break and switch topics. One thing, because this is probably the last time we're going to be talking about Roseanne. I really don't see her career come back from this. But something that kind of got lost in the weeds with the initial controversy of her coming back and getting the show and being a vocal Trump supporter. She had a long and winding road to get to that point. It was only a few short years ago. She was actually running for the candidacy for the Green Party. There's actually some quote in one of the new episodes about who's Jill Stein, which is a dig, because she literally ran against Jill Stein back in 2012. And she actually described herself as a socialist, and even as recently as 2016 talked about being down with Bernie Sanders. And it's what people don't talk about. It's not even just that ABC's trying to get that right-wing money. For a lot of working class leftists, it was a really big betrayal in a much more personal way, because one of my favorite moments from the original show in the 90s, and I grew up watching this because that was basically my family, on the screen there, was some politician who's running for state senate knocks on her door, and she basically asks him the same questions that we ask politicians on our show. It's where's your money coming from? And it's what do you think about unions? It's she volunteers go keep walking with him because he gets really nervous because she's not accepting his canned answers, and it's her whole show and her whole character back then revolved around being kind of a working class smart ass who could call out BS when she saw it, and then to fall for the snake oil crap of Donald Trump and then make it a point to make that a character choice on her show. That was just
that she represents the modern disenfranchised Republican white American. And that's the thing. This is the America that mainstream media ignores. That's what she represented. There's a lot of anger and vitriol, and a lot of people don't know where to actually direct it. The problem is that back then she knew where to direct it because she was actually educated and reading on it. Now she's falling for the okie doke just like everybody else.
Oh yeah,
and that's a lot of, it's not just her. A lot of people have, and a lot of people were disenfranchised and didn't feel like voting because they see what it is. We have a political system where the most powerful two parties are part of the same beast.
Man, I don't know if we ever got a chance to talk about it, but you remember that New York Times article that really they went to Wisconsin and just, I've never seen the mainstream media so honestly just reveal the mainstream cynicism and dejectedness of the average voter that you or I talk to every day, but just doesn't make the news. It's we didn't vote. I mean, I
saw that article. It was also one of the things that we talked about in our group chat. I did also want to talk about how Tom Perez is backing Andrew Cuomo.
Oh man,
that is another thing that we need to bring up, or the fact that Puerto Rico's they finally told the truth about Puerto Rico.
Oh man,
and that is not getting any news in the mainstream media.
It is not getting enough coverage at all. And, okay, let's take a break and we'll hit on all of those topics and more. You're listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
apparent. The hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in the Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
Are you trying to get your local business's name out to the WMU and Greater Kalamazoo communities? Why not do so while supporting Radio Evolution through underwriting and donations? For more information, please visit widerfm.org.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. You are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. Got a few, we got a basket full of topics to cover here.
I just want to do one quick hit. Just one quick hit. I didn't mean to interrupt. This is a good week for hip-hop. This has been a good couple weeks for hip-hop. For those who not know, Pusha T and Drake has been having a really good MC battle when it comes to diss tracks and stuff. And it's been a really good week for hip-hop. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah.
All right. So I think I did want to jump off with... So I at the top of the show, I mentioned this Heather Heyer's birthday was yesterday. And Lawrence, you brought up something that isn't really important. Like we talked about this on the show before, but it ties into something even more recent than that. And I was wondering, do you want to like just kind of
I can
throw it out there?
I can hit you with a quick hit. For those who, I wanted to also bring to light when we talk about Heather Heyer that after the Charlottesville march, there was police officers. There were politicians that thought that it would be a good idea to allow people in cars to run over protesters. That is not a punchline. That is not a joke. And in a lot of southern states, they do not want dissent. So if you are in the road protesting, there are people who are trying to pass laws that would allow people who run over protesters to not be convicted.
Are you shutting down a highway with your car?
No, there's actually...
It's too bad that you got run over by somebody in a car.
There was a similar bill in the Michigan state legislature. It didn't end up going forward, but it was introduced. Just so y'all know. Yeah, they tried doing that here, too.
Now, the reason why I wanted to bring that up and the reason why I want to talk about this, because one of the protesters from the Parkland shooter, the one that's been in the news a lot, David Hoggs, a police officer from Coconut Creek, K9 officer, posted on Facebook targeting Hoggs and the other protesters, and this police officer said, I hope some old lady loses control of her car and hits him.
Oh, good God.
Yeah. Like, that is not a joke. That is not a punchline. A police officer said that while these kids are protesting about mass shootings and trying to get gun control, that he hopes that some lady hits one of them, and he was specifically talking about David Hoggs. So this police officer is advocating for people to get run over by cars because he does not like protesting.
Oof. And to think too, like there's actually, I know there's some police departments who have been supportive of March for Our Lives, but
there's been a lot of police that have been supportive of the March for Our Lives. There's been a lot of police and service people who's been supportive of the NFL protests. There's been a lot of police and officers who also were in support of DAPL, like when the cavalry came and stuff. So I mean, it's not like we don't have actual police officers or military personnel, other people who are not on the right side of history. We just have a system and an establishment that overwhelmingly don't want the system to change because they're making profit from it. And then you have cops like this that do not see protesters as human beings or do not respect dissent. They are authoritarian fascists in the making with power. Mm-hmm. That's what they are. They want you to fall in line, and if you do not fall in line with our propaganda, then you do not need to be on this planet with us. This is how they think. And I hope I'm not misrepresenting his point when he says, I hope an old lady hits the protesters with a car.
I mean, that's pretty concise. Oh God.
Yeah. So, but that's a quick hit story. I mean, we got a couple other stories that we can talk about.
Well, I did want to touch on, if only so briefly. This happened just after our show last week, and okay. So I'll just start by saying, so here's a challenge: describe a geopolitical event badly. Tell me if you know what I'm talking about. Idiot president almost does something accidentally right for once until his employees threaten to kill a foreign leader.
Oh my God! You're talking about? Are you talking about
missile crisis?
Are you talking about? I was going to go there, but
I actually have no idea what you're talking about.
I was actually going to say the peace talks between North Korea and South Korea until our vice president said we might have to do the Libya model if North Korea doesn't come to the table.
Oh my God!
Here's the thing, and this is the thing that I want to say this before we get out the way. Could you imagine if China or North Korea or Iran or Russia was to say, if America doesn't stop their imperialism, we're going to have to do the Pearl Harbor or 9/11 strategy on them. Mm-hmm. Like, what?
People be pretty mad about that.
Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. If another country was to say that about us with all the military bases that we have on the planet, we would have launched right then and there.
Oh yeah.
I'm just saying that the people in charge right now, who I don't think they know that other people aren't as stupid as them. I really don't think they know.
They just don't have that self-awareness.
That other world leaders are not that stupid. And man, it's
here's the thing, and I'm trying. One of the reasons I brought this up is I wanted to mention a few things that I think really aren't maybe being brought up or kind of just are in between the lines. And the thing is, a lot of people, most commentators have described this in terms of incompetence. No, Bolton and Pence said that for a reason, and what happened was their agenda represents more or less the agenda of the traditional deep state or military industrial complex. Whereas
They're
Trump,
neocons.
they're neocons.
They're straight neocons. That's what they are.
And Trump, for as horrible as he is in just about every way you can think of, he is driven by ego. I think he genuinely wanted to make those peace talks happen. I mean, he made little commemorative coins, so that he could say, "Hey, look, everybody, look at me. I did this thing. I brought peace between the Koreas." But it's his ego and his desire to basically get a pat on the head from everybody for doing whatever it is that he did to help facilitate this, which really wasn't much, but he wanted to take the credit anyway. But that was sabotaged by people in his cabinet who want us to maintain a perpetually hawkish stance towards North Korea.
Not to mention the fact that, the administration has been pumping up this summit that Trump is supposed to hold with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. They've been pumping it up and pumping it up and pumping it up, making a big deal out of it, making it the biggest deal of the century for this administration. Oh, it's going to be so great. Peace. We're going to solve the North Korean problem, even though President Moon of South Korea met with Kim Jong-un of North Korea, what was it, 2 weeks ago now?
About 3
weeks ago. And they had a cordial meeting and had what appeared to be very constructive dialogue without the interjection of any kind of American presence. Then Mike Pence makes this...
And John Bolton.
Tone-deaf comment, and North Korea calls a spade a spade. It's like, why would you say something so stupid? Why would you say something so stupid? Why would you risk this? But then, Trump, being the gaslighter that he is, has to try to turn it back on North Korea to make it seem like it's their fault. On top of the fact that this administration is still teasing that there might be a summit, there might be a peace summit, there could be a peace summit still if they want to tone down their rhetoric. And at this point, really, the best thing America could do for the Korean situation is to shut up and do nothing.
I mean, they were trying to give Trump a Nobel Peace Prize. Okay, there's a thing that we talk about in politics called carrots and sticks. Okay, a stick is us using our military. A carrot is, hey, you don't do something stupid, we create peace, and you get a Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah. Trump likes shiny things. He is an 11-year-old boy. He's that's horrible. He's an 8-year-old boy. Okay, yeah. and he wants the respect and attention of everyone who talks about who he sees on the media. He wants their love and praise. How do you get presidential? Okay, question mark, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. So what's presidential, quote unquote? He bombs a country for no reason that did not attack us.
And then Brian Jennings almost has an orgasm on it.
Right, and then CNN says that this is when he was presidential because he bombed a country for no reason. Or you want to know another way of being presidential? How about we follow the Jimmy Carter method and we don't actually get engaged into any actual foreign wars and we actually have peace? Jimmy Carter, during his presidency, created peace between Egypt and Israel, the two most powerful superpowered nations in that region, who were on the brink of who were at each other's throats. The Jimmy Carter administration said, "Hey, how about we hash out this deal and y'all not go to war?"
Anybody want a peanut?
Right. No. So that's the way that you can be presidential. That's the way that you can actually be show that you're not a complete and utter dimwit. Because do you really think Trump cares about cares if North Korea and South Korea gets peace? No, he doesn't. He cares about money.
Please keep in mind, like half a year ago, he was literally threatening to start a thermonuclear war with them. So
but the thing, it goes deeper than that. And the reason why it goes deeper than that, because a lot of companies, communication companies that China and North Korea deals with, are companies that were being shipped out of America that Trump is now doing business with. He's breaking the emolument clause by doing business, by not divesting from different businesses. He's enriching himself as being president, and he can do it either by going to war with this country or by making a profit with a lot of the with China and some of its other allies. So for him, it's a win-win situation because he's still going to land in a pile of money. But the difference is that that hundreds and thousands of people could be slain in the process if he doesn't make the right deal. That's the thing that's scary about this.
That sure is. So it's about 5:50. We're going to have a guest via phone to talk about the Shri Thanedar protest that happened on Friday.
I was there.
Yeah.
I wasn't there for the protest, but I saw the protest.
Yeah.
I do have some comments.
Yeah. But we got about 10 minutes, so I was going to say, like, we've got a couple topics to talk about, but I did want to... go ahead, Lawrence.
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that. I mean, the story you sent us about Israel... it's just
we need to talk about Puerto Rico because we haven't done that.
Puerto Rico,
and we could talk about Israel after the phone call. Mm-hmm. But we need to talk about Puerto Rico. For those who do not know, around 50 to 60% of Puerto Rico still does not have power even after the storm. The tourist areas of Puerto Rico is up and running, but a lot of places still don't have water. And the death count just came up between 56,000, between 5,000 and some change.
Yeah.
People have died because of the storm and because of Hurricane Maria. It is 3 times bigger than Hurricane Katrina.
And even at the very beginning, there were many activists, organizers, and politicians in Puerto Rico who were accusing, rightfully, the administration of lowballing these death toll numbers. And even when Trump came down to visit Puerto Rico, he talked about he gloated and bragged about how few casualties there actually were. And everybody, even at the time,
he was saying, "This is not my Katrina. This is not my Katrina." And he's right. This is not like Katrina because Katrina was worse. This is not like Katrina because, let me correct myself.
Yeah.
Hurricane Maria was worse than Hurricane Katrina, and the aftermath of what he's done is worse than what President Obama did. So, for him to say that no, this is not his Katrina, yeah, he's right because it's worse than Katrina. That's why it's objectively 3 times worse than what Katrina was. And it's amazing how we spent more money sending missiles to Damascus, shooting missiles into Syria, than we have spending money on relief efforts in Puerto Rico. That's the long and short of it.
The American government is inherently broken, and it doesn't give any kind of regard to the thing that actually makes up American society, which is the thing they rely on to exist. So, welcome to the decline of Rome, everybody. Decline of Rome 2.0.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. For Think Progress has the actual numbers. At least 4,645 people and perhaps as many as 5,740 died in Puerto Rico as a result of Hurricane Maria. That is what Think Progress has put up. Now, again, like I said, it's objectively 3 times bigger than Hurricane Katrina.
I mean, it's one of those. It's kind of one of those things where media, especially corporate media, will focus on the immediate aftermath of the event, the deaths of the immediate aftermath, like that were directly caused by high winds and flying shrapnel. Mm-hmm. But when we have to keep in mind that large natural disasters like Maria, Katrina, the tsunami in 2005?
Yeah.
The one that hit Haiti?
Yeah,
The disaster that hit Haiti?
Yeah. Like these, the death tolls and the actual cost, the actual human cost of these events is always greater than it is actually made to seem because of slow response times and slow aid times brought about by government inaction.
And one thing that I haven't seen in the coverage of this, because I will say, like, a few outlets have been reporting this. I think it was on like CBS this morning today. But one thing they didn't say is, like, why is this death toll so high? They didn't talk about like any of the reasons for it. And what it really boils down to is the reason that the death toll number is so high is a direct result of FEMA's and this administration's negligence when it came to Puerto Rico. And like we've said this before, and I'm
preach on it.
Say it again. They treated Puerto Rico like some like probably on one of or Trump's list of S-hole countries or whatever, instead of it's technically part of the United States. Now there's a whole complicated history, colonialist history with Puerto Rico that it would probably take a whole hour to really dive into, but. Oh, excuse me. The lack of capacity for this administration to really go in there and deal with the problem in the way that it needed to be, that was no accident. And you trace that same thread through the slow reaction to helping the victims of Katrina. It's based on race, it's based on class. Even the parts of Puerto Rico that the government has focused on, like you said, Lawrence, they're like the touristy areas or the middle to upper class suburbs. I mean, that's the only place that Trump actually physically visited when he came there after the storm.
I mean, think about it like this. We've had devastating hurricanes hit Florida and Houston. Imagine if 60% of Texas or 60% of Florida still didn't have power after a hurricane.
Yeah. Let's keep in mind that hurricane season is coming again. Hurricane season is upon us, and the weather this year so far has broken every record that was set last year.
It's almost like it's like this constant trend. It's almost as though something about our climate is changing.
It's almost like the global climate is warming, and because of that, extreme weather events continue to become even more extreme.
Guys, you have to remember, a congressperson brought a snowball into a chamber and showed that it still snowed outside. So all of those theories and ideas have to be false.
And world hunger isn't real because I had lunch today.
Yeah, that's right.
Homelessness isn't a thing because I got into my car and drove home today.
Yeah, I saw that guy. He had a tent.
Right.
Homelessness isn't a problem because I have a house.
Right. It like the thing that bothers me the most about the cutting of programs like FEMA, having the head of FEMA and the head of Human Services being people who wanted to destroy those programs, only shows the lack of empathy and humanity in our administration, because if it was their children or their family members that was hit by this devastation, then their entire mindset towards it would change. You see it with Republicans all the time. It's not real until it happens to me. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing if we compare the opiate crisis. You know, drugs have always been a problem in this country. Heroin and crack was always a problem in this country until it started affecting white communities. And then, oh my God, opiates is a horrible addiction. We shouldn't
Republicans they started talking about it as a healthcare issue in the same way that, you know, people on the left have been talking about drug issues for years. But all of a sudden, because it affects the people who basically vote them into office, all of a sudden, now I'm compassionate and now I see.
I know it started affecting their families. Their families started getting addicted to opiates and like, what? Why are you taking my son for doing drugs? He was just trying to feel better. You don't say.
Yeah.
You don't say. Thank you for coming to the table finally.
Yeah. All right. I think with that, it's time for another break. When we come back, I believe friend Eponine, we're going to give her a call. She was at the Shri Thanedar protest / forum on Friday, and I believe you were there too, Laura.
I came late. To be fair, and I heard some questions. I looked at his platform. I actually also invited him to the show, and he said that if we email him and we contact him, that the next time he's coming to Kalamazoo, he will join our show.
All right. Okay.
And I'm also sending this to Abdul as well. If Abdul listens to this, we also need to get you up on here to talk about some policies too, brother.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna start hitting up the state candidates pretty soon. We've had all the congressional folks on. So.
Oh yeah, we need to get some of the we need to get the people who's running for the governorship to come on the show.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick little break. We come back. We're going to hop on that topic. You are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
What's up, everybody? It's RJD2, and you're listening to 89.1 WIDR FM, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
You're listening to WIDR 89.1 FM. Robot, oops, me.
WIDR is proud to be supported by Pedal Bicycle. Pedal Bicycle has 2 locations on 611 West Michigan Ave and 185 Romans Road. More information can be found at pedalbicycle.com.
Is your RSO looking for new ways to get its name out to Western's campus and the greater Kalamazoo community? Why not use the wider airwaves? For more information on how we can work together to promote your organization and events, go to widrfm.org and click on the Airtime and Sponsorship page under the Support tab.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. Now, we wanted to pivot to some local political activism that happened on Friday. And I wasn't able to make it to this one myself, but Shri Thanedar, who we've talked about a little bit on the show before, he came into town to do a gubernatorial forum, and
He did town hall.
Town hall, yeah. And we had some folks out there counter protesting, and it was primarily organized by Jessica Martin and the Lake Michigan Revolutionary Coalition. We're joined right now by Epping Garrett, who was there participating at the rally and the forum. So, yeah, go ahead. Just say hello, Eppy. How you doing today?
Hi, everybody. Glad to be on the show.
Hey, Eppy.
All right. So I want to just start by asking, like, just broad strokes. So the main thing that so a couple of local news outlets did cover what y'all guys did, and they mostly painted a picture of you talking about his some dubious things that have happened with his history on animal rights. And I know there's some other stuff going on too, but could you describe to the listeners at home what is this incident that y'all were bringing attention to as far as Shri Thanedar and his treatment of animals in the past?
Right. So we primarily wanted to focus on the animals, as that's something that is across party lines, whatever political side you associate with. We all love animals and want them to be treated right. So the situation that we were there to bring light to is something that you can find posted on a lot of major news sources. There's court records, and that is that Shri Thanedar had a business which went under. It went bankrupt, and so the bank took over. And part of this business, what he did was research and development for a bunch of different types of chemicals, and to sell in certain markets, he had to do animal testing. Now, whether the animals were treated appropriately and taken care of while they were in his care, while the business was running, that I'm not positive about. What we do know is that when the business went bankrupt and the bank took over, Shri left the animals inside to starve, and these were primarily dogs, beagles, and monkeys. So these beagles and these monkeys were left in these cages to starve, while he argued with the banks over trying to hold on to them so he could sell them for profit, rather than making sure that they were immediately given to shelters, given to people who could take care of them, distributed to loving families, etc. He instead wanted to try to make a buck off of these animals. And actually, employees had to hop fences to get inside to this closed down building, to get in there and take care of these animals. And in fact, some of the rescuers that got these animals out when the beagles set foot outside for the first time said it seemed like that was the first time they had ever even stepped on grass. So not only was he put them in there to starve, it's pretty indicative that he wasn't taking good care of them before he was bankrupted either.
I mean, Effie. Hello?
Yeah. Oh.
Okay, she hear me?
Yeah.
Oh. Yo, Effie.
Yeah.
Yo, when you were there, and y'all was when I got there, y'all was standing and protesting on the other side of the room. Were any of the questions that you just any of the things that you just brought up? When I got there, he was answering questions. Did he answer any of those questions that y'all were talking about? Yes.
So he told a story from the side where he was the victim of the bankruptcy, and that he claims that he paid $160,000 for 3 months for the care of these animals. Now that's about 200 animals. I did the math on that, and he's claiming that he spent approximately $250 or so per animal per month. I spend that much on 6 animals at home per month. So not only is that negated by the court documents and the court records, it's also a ridiculous number to try to throw out there.
Wow. Yeah. No. Go ahead, Morris. Yeah.
I mean, just to say something, like, he paid more money to go talk to John McCain and Mitt Romney than he did to take care of the animals, from what you're saying.
Right. And even if that is the amount he put on animals, I don't know what he's doing, but that's excessive. It doesn't add up. I'll put it that way. And yes, as you were getting with John McCain, and we had some signs saying how he loves and supports Marco Rubio, to talk about it's more than just the animals. There's a whole history behind Shri that doesn't add up with the message that he's trying to send in his gubernatorial race.
Oh, and I was wondering if maybe we could discuss that a little bit more in depth, because I know a lot of local coverage, again, focused mostly on the animal rights aspect of it, but there have been inconsistencies with Shri's record that have been pointed out by even a lot of like national media outlets. We've referenced a couple of Intercept articles they've written about Shri, but I know he's out there, he does a lot of these commercials, he pushes himself as a Bernie-esque progressive. And I know there are people in the progressive movement in Michigan who find that to be kind of a dubious claim. And I was wondering if maybe you could highlight a little bit more of that and that kind of aspect of what you were there speaking about and protesting.
Certainly. So one of the things that bothers me about Shri's campaign is he calls himself the progressive candidate. To have that kind of lack of humility and just complete disregard for other folks in the race, to call yourself the progressive candidate and not even receive the endorsement of the Progressive Caucus of Michigan, is overly pompous and is just the tip of the iceberg, I think, to seeing this pattern of lies that he's come up with. While we were there at the not the forum, but the town hall style that he was doing, as someone who claims to be progressive, he spent an awful lot of time talking about the merits of capitalism and how he wants to see a Michigan where everybody can grow up with the dream to become rich one day. That does not fit with the progressive platform. The donations that he's made to Republicans, including Marco Rubio, including John McCain, do not fit with the progressive platform. And recently, video has surfaced as well of him doing a Welcome to My Crib style video of his multi-million-dollar mansion, which included chandeliers in the bathroom. Now, I'm not saying that people don't have a right to have a chandelier in their bathroom if they want, but don't turn around, run for governor, and try to tell us that you know how to be frugal.
Guys,
that just doesn't line up.
Shri's just like us.
Oh yeah,
Shri is just like us. You know, who doesn't have chandeliers in their bathroom? Who doesn't live in multi-million-dollar mansions with 8 bedrooms and what have you? Like, no, Shri is just like us.
Okay.
Capitalism is great.
Okay. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Hopefully next time he comes back in Kalamazoo, we'll have him in the studio, and we're gonna have some. We're gonna talk to him the same way we talk to everybody else that came in this room, especially Epi. Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you because I got there late. Did anyone bring up the fact that when he bought access to our politicians by giving them $30,000 in their campaigns to speak to them, that it's that type of money in politics that is a problem? Like, did he address that at all?
Not while I was in the room. No, that question was not asked by an audience member while I was present, at least. And I will say again, a lot of what he discussed was money, and especially how much he loves it and the merits of capitalism and how much good it's done for him, and how he wants to see, he didn't spend a lot of time talking about policy, about ideas that we can do to make a level playing field. He talked about how he wants people to be able to dream about getting rich. That is It's
Oh,
laughable,
man.
quite frankly.
I think right now there's a lot of people just dreaming about having clean drinking water. So that's,
Right.
or schools
and
that
I
are
don't
not.
doubt he talks a lot about his family background and growing up in poverty, and I believe that that's true. I have no reason to doubt that. He tells a story a lot about how his mother had a boiling pot of water, and it was some kind of paste, like a rice paste that she made, and that's all they had to eat that day. And, I understand that, but I think he's lost sight of the fact that there are folks right here all across the state of Michigan, in Kalamazoo including, who are going to bed without even the rice paste. So he's really lost sight, I think, of what it truly means to be in poverty, what it means to be poor. And again, has just, since he started making money, he hasn't done his share of giving back to the community.
And I wanted to ask you too, because we're lucky to get some. Well, you've been running in the 6th district for Congress as a progressive, and I think you're really kind of tied into that community, and not only that, but like the overall kind of strategic framework of what progressive campaigns are like. And to have so Shri kind of coming out with this self-funded campaign, he doesn't even have like the endorsement of our Revolution or any of those other progressive groups. Like, what is your response as somebody who's actually running on this platform, but is also has actually been part of the grassroots movements, to somebody who seems to just be kind of like copy pasting the platform, but not really having any involvement with the progressive movement and where it's at?
Yeah, so obviously endorsements aren't everything. They don't tell the whole picture, but it is telling if you're claiming to be the only progressive candidate, and there's another candidate out there getting the endorsements from our Revolution, from the Progressive Caucus of Michigan. I mean, Shri clearly wants to be labeled a progressive so badly because he knows that that's the direction that our government is moving, the direction young people and older people alike are moving in. That at the convention that we had in Provost in Detroit this past couple of months ago, he showed up to the Progressive Caucus and made his way to the front of the room after being informed that only candidates endorsed by that caucus were going to get a chance to speak. He made his way up to the front of the room and tried to take over and had to be escorted back out. He made a fool of himself, and it was, quite frankly, it was pathetic. So coming from a grassroots movement myself, being a part of this, we know that you need trust. You absolutely have to have trust to build a grassroots movement and to have a grassroots campaign. Even if you don't have millions of dollars coming in, you have a wide variety of donors. You have people giving you small amounts in addition to perhaps larger amounts because you've built that trust. You have folks who you don't have to pay to go out and do the work. You have people who are there because they want to be. We're not seeing that with Shri's campaign. Most everybody that we talk to as part of his staff doesn't even know his policies, doesn't know his platform. They're there because he's cutting them a check. And that is not grassroots. That's not the voice of the progressive movement.
Well, I think what was most telling is, we were, and just full disclosure, I've done some work with for Epi's campaign, but there was a bunch of us scrambling for signatures the weekend of the Democratic convention in Michigan, and all of those people that were in town volunteering for your campaign were doing it for free, while at the same time, there was a couple of individuals who actually came up to him personally, who had been doing some signature collecting in Detroit, and basically confronted him about not paying them money that the campaign had promised.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
There's just a lot of holes in the stories that he tells, and he hasn't done a good job filling them. And it gets even more complicated. Well, not necessarily complicated, but it just gets more convoluted when he can't even answer simple questions like, how does a bill become a law? He responds by saying, I'll have people that will know how to do that. It's not a person you can trust. When you have somebody who's been reported as not knowing which party to run on, wanted to see which one he'd have a higher chance of winning, that's not somebody you trust. And that's going to be a pitfall for him ultimately.
Now, Effie, this is where I do need to disagree with you on one small thing, just a small thing. When you're in a race, you're supposed to come out saying that I'm the best person, I'm the only progressive, I'm this, that, or the third, because you're trying to gather votes. So by disregarding everyone else, it's a good strategy, and it's actually if you're going to say that you are, then that's why I disagree with you on. But I do agree that if you're going to say that you're progressive, you have to actually have the receipt and background of being said progressive. And you call yourself a progressive on policy, the policy that you saw from his town hall. What is it that he is actually lacking when it comes to policy?
A solid plan. And first of all, I appreciate, voicing a disagreement. I think that's awesome to be able to have that kind of dialogue. I would pose that perhaps it's not a great strategy if you can't back up what you're saying, because then you come across as a liar.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
But what his policy and platform is lacking is, quite frankly, any substance. He's essentially copied and pasted the main ideas of the progressive movement: single-payer health care, tuition-free public universities, pro-marijuana legalization. But then he doesn't have any substance behind them. He has no real plan. He's parroting phrases that he's heard, but if you really drill down to ask him these simple questions about, well, what steps would you take to implement this policy? Do you think that people that are incarcerated for marijuana should be released when we legalize it? He doesn't quite have all the details figured out, and I think it's due to a lack of real understanding of these issues and having a real passion behind them to understand them. To drill down to a specific example, we can look at marijuana. He says he's pro-legalization. He has gone on record saying he believes we should legalize the marijuana and then figure out how to go about releasing inmates who have been incarcerated for marijuana possession. That's not very progressive. That is democratic, sure, something that somebody as a member of the Democratic Party would say, but it's not progressive, because at least in the realm of progressivism that I find myself in, we would be looking for a solution where these things could happen simultaneously, or if anything, to get the people that have been incarcerated out of that incarceration first and make that marijuana available for the general public.
I would also, just to add to that, I would also say, if you're not reallocating the funds of marijuana and that taxation to the communities that have been affected by the drug laws the hardest, then you're not being progressive at all, because you're saying that you'll take the money from poor disenfranchised minorities who's been locked up for for minor drug offenses, but you're not going to put any money into those communities to rebuild them after destroying them.
And to draw in kind of a distinction between him and, say, and I'll just bring up like Abdul, because he is the one who's been endorsed by Our Revolution and Justice Democrats and a lot of these other progressive groups. When asked that same question, he has a very detailed answer about not just how it'll improve the state with the tax revenue, but about like the first thing he comes off with is something that we've talked about on the show a lot and been concerned about, and it's making sure that corporations don't get a head start or get unequal incentives to monopolize this new industry that's going to be popping up. And that's certainly not something I've heard from, Shri Thanedar. But I think what we're kind of circling around here is, he has kind of a lack of knowledge. And I kind of like to hear, like, say, let's make another comparison. So Cynthia Nixon, she's running for governor of New York.
Ooh,
and
the segue.
Yeah, and one could say that, she's similarly unqualified to Shri Thanedar, but her progressive bona fides are taken a little bit more seriously by people in the progressive movement. So what do you think would be the biggest distinction between because they're both ostensibly political novices and outsider candidates. What would be the biggest distinction between a candidate, say, like Cynthia Nixon and Shri Thanedar when it comes to their progressive bona fides?
In my personal opinion, it is the passion and the dedication. With Cynthia Nixon, we see passion, we see dedication to the causes. We see her putting her money where her mouth is, not just into her own campaign, but into making sure that these progressive ideas are being supported across the community. With Shri, we see him funneling money into himself, and we don't see even enough passion to gain education on these topics. I mean, even the most basic of things. He's been asked multiple times. I mentioned this earlier, once on a PBS broadcast and once at the WMU Democrats meeting. Those are the two that I know of for sure. How a bill becomes a law in the state. And both times he did not have an answer. So he didn't even learn from the first time he was asked the question to go and look up that information. And that to me says a lot about where his heart is at, where his motivations may be. And progressives are interested in knowing that a person is sincere and honest and that they're doing things for the right reasons. So, having no political background, having no experience running for office before, that part is less of an issue for progressives. Again, speaking from my own paradigm here, but it's how quickly are you willing to learn? How are you willing to go the extra mile to make sure that you can stay on par with the folks who have skin in the game, who have been doing this for so many years? Shri just is not stepping up to that challenge, and he's not showing us that he really cares about these issues.
Yeah, and I think something that can be kind of frustrating watching Shri's, where Shri's coming from is like, you and a couple of the other campaigns here in the 6th District that I know of done a really good job doing actual like grassroots campaigning and canvassing. Like you and I know at least like you and Dave actually go out there and knock on doors, and you have volunteers who do that. Whereas it seems like Shri's main strategy thus far has been just buy up all the airtime in Michigan. So
right.
Do you think there's something kind of antithetical about basically, talking about having this progressive platform that's supposed to tackle inequality and having like your main tool in your toolbox be, here is my big money war chest?
Oh, it's a huge red flag. He's flying the red flags all around. It's if you can't even live up to your own expectations out of the government, how can you expect us to believe that you'll be able to fight for those same values? It's the same. He always tries to find a scapegoat for reasons why he can't do now what he's saying he's going to do as governor. And we can bring it back to the animals even. He constantly likes to blame the fact that the animals were left in the building for 3 months. And he doesn't deny that they were left in that building for 3 months, but he instead blames it on the bank. When the court records indicate otherwise, but all of us in the progressive movement know that if we had animals starving to death inside a building that we were in charge of and responsible for, we would risk arrest, we would risk whatever to get in there and get those animals taken care of. To spend 3 months arguing in a court over it is, again, just indicative of where that cognitive dissonance is between what he says he will do versus where his record has been.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wind down the interview, but I want to make sure, I think my co-hosts wanted to wrap up with a couple more questions. Lawrence, did you want to?
Not Effie, I love seeing you and everybody else at the protest. I wanted to say one more thing. How, as a progressive, and we care about grassroots support, how many supporters did you see there in conjunction with the protesters?
It was hard to know for sure exactly how many folks there were supporters versus how many were there just to learn who this candidate was, which I highly encourage, going to any and all candidate forums that you can and to town halls. But the folks that were at least ready to jump up with Shri signs on the other side of the room while we stood on the other side with our signs, we probably were about evenly matched. I'd say it was about 7 to 8 to 7 to 8. Now, if you take away the people that were being paid to be there, it was probably closer to 3 or 4 folks that stood up of their own volition to support him.
Rip, that was oof. I've actually got nothing.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you again, Epi, for joining us on the show. Drive safe, and thanks for taking the time of your day to talk about the protest.
Hey, the pleasure's all mine. It's always great to be on WIDR.
All right. Thank you very much, Eponine. All right. We're going to close that interview off, and then I think it's about time for a break. So let's go ahead and do that. Y'all are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Bees are disappearing, and no one really knows why. Bees help us grow all of our fruits and veggies through pollination. A world without bees could mean a world without apples, oranges, and avocados. No avocados means no guacamole. You can help save the bees by supporting our beekeepers by buying local raw honey, or by reducing the use of pesticides in your home garden. Another great way to help is by planting bee-friendly plants like clover, lavender, and sage. This has been a friendly reminder from Wider to save the bees and be happy.
Be happy.
Open slot in the Wider Clock and could be filled with an underwriting announcement for your local Kalamazoo business. For more information, please visit widerfm.org and head to the contact page.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. So once again, big thank you for Epi for coming on the show and talking about the protest there. So I was there's two stories in particular that I really wanted to hit on in the time we got left. And
you want to do a quick hit? And then
please
go into another one.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay, so the DNC tried to do a deep dive and say that we're going to be neutral and we're not going to get involved in racist, and we're not going to get in the way of 2018 primaries. And yeah. If you thought that was gonna happen, you were lied to, bro. Tom Perez endorsed Andrew Cuomo, even though they were saying that the DNC is going to be neutral and not get involved. It's in that same vein of President Obama endorsing Dianne Feinstein, which happened last month. So,
the thing about it too, Keith Ellison was doing an interview on Democracy Now!, and they brought up Amy Goodman, asked them about the Steve Crow tape. Is that Steve Crow? And that's the tape. That's the Intercept article that was really hot a couple weeks ago, where they literally caught on tape a high-ranking member of the Democratic Party saying we're tilting. We are putting our finger on the scale for this corporate dude. We don't want you running. And they asked Keith Ellison about that, and he said, no, I don't think the party should be tipping the scale in that way. And then the very next day, of course, Tom Perez was like, by the way.
Tom Perez says, hey, jumping on the scale. Did Steny Hoyer jump on the scale? Hold my beer. So the Democratic Party needs the establishment to do the dirty tricks that it did before, and they will justify it by saying, well, it is our constitutional right to do so, to break their own laws, bylaws, and charters to get the establishment candidate elected, when you have seen over the past special elections and past elections that has happened since 2016, the Democratic Socialist, Green Party, the people who are farthest to the left, basically everyone who's a Bernie-crat and light has won. Everyone who is Bernie and or more than Bernie has won.
And really to highlight it, in a lot of places where centrist Democrats have never stood a chance. Like they have toppled really powerful Republicans in places and areas that Democrats, the establishment Democrats, typically think you cannot compete in. So
the other thing is, you have groups like Democratic Socialists, Justice Democrats, Brand New Congress, Our Revolution, the Working People Party, or the Poor People Party. These groups are not new groups. I mean, these groups are new groups. These groups are brand new groups. They've only been around for like a year and some change after the 2016 election, and they have around between a 40 to 50% win rate. Remember, folks, the Democratic establishment, before these groups were a thing, lost 1,000 seats.
I mean, it's one of those things where when you take a look at it, when you take a look at the things and the candidates that the Democratic Party, that the establishment Democratic Party really supports, it's not really, we have to signal progressivism and inclusivity and dealing with the social issues that plague America today, and then run to the right. It is literally like the candidates they select are not a result of genius political maneuvering. It's literally what the Democratic establishment supports. So when it's not a political game-changing move to support a centrist corporate friendly candidate. It is literally the modus operandi of the Democratic Party, because that is who they are and that is what they support. And that, like, and honestly, if you haven't realized that now, as someone who maybe is a vote blue no matter who, because it's better than getting a Republican, I implore you to really actually get involved and start looking up a little more, because the people that the establishment supports don't support you.
The reason why is because they have a financial interest not to.
That's right.
That's the main reason why. Why do you think that there was multiple races where the Justice Democrat or Our Revolution candidate was leading, yet the establishment poured in hundreds, thousands of dollars to go against them? The reason why is because when you actually have progressive policies or progressive ideas, they are going to run counter to the pro-Wall Street, pro-privatization of the fundraisers of the Democratic Party.
And I really do want to re-emphasize, because, there are people, we have listeners from kind of all over the left, and, do not give these Democrats the benefit of the doubt, because one of the most brazen things they've done this cycle, we remember what happened to Laura Moser in Texas, where the Democratic Congressional Coordinating Committee literally put out opposition research against her, against somebody running inside their own party. Now keep in mind, the Republicans, as an example, Republicans hated Donald Trump. They did not want him to be the nominee. But you know what? All the other candidates talked smack about him, but the party itself, they let that crap happen. Now, of course, a lot of that has to do with the fact that as troublesome and horrible as Donald Trump is, he does not threaten the economic bottom line of the Republican Party in the way that, say, a progressive does to the Democrats. But
they thought he would. They thought he would present that kind of a challenge with his faux populist rhetoric, talking about investing in the American people and putting America first and putting American jobs first and doing all that. They thought he was going to be super disruptive, and then all of a sudden they shut up real fast and got real quiet about any and all complaints they had about him as soon as they realized that, no, he's an easily manipulated toady.
The other aspect of this is that why the other aspect is that they see the progressive wave coming, and it terrifies them. Why do you think you have people like Christian Gillibrand, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris? They're starting to take pages from that progressive playbook. They're starting. They're making moves because, yes, they're going to run for 2020, but they're making moves because they're not stupid. Like there are a lot of stupid politicians. The ones who are trying to run for president, a majority of them are not. They see this wave coming.
Yeah, and just kind of broaden that out too. I don't think and granted, we've still got a lot of areas to grow and improve, but I do want to, it's just on the bright side, kind of emphasize the left has not been this aggressive and organized since at least the 1960s, and one could even say we are finally seeing kind of like the pushback to the Lewis Powell, Reagan revolution type of economics on a very broad scale. And this could, I feel like this is something that could grow into a level of political pressure and power that we haven't seen since the New Deal. Now, there are other difficulties in historical, unique historical aspects to that too. I personally think the billionaire class of America today is a lot more arrogant than they were in the 1930s, and a hell of a lot less afraid of widespread revolution from the people. Keep in mind, the 30s, this was just less than 15 years after the Bolsheviks happened. But
the other part about this is the Democrats recently also brought out their platform and policy that they want to fight on. Their New Deal or their new ideas, their better deal that they came out with. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and other people brought out their better deal, and they talked about voting integrity. A party that has super delegates were talking about how they want to protect the vote for Americans. That is literally like Arby's, who says we're about the meat, saying that we're gonna work on our vegetarian platters. like what?
Oh man.
like that. Okay, so to jump on that, when you looked at their better deal, and I looked at a lot of the stuff that they were talking about with a better deal. They don't get it, man. They still think that they can run the same type of playbook as we're not the other guys. You don't really have a choice. We're not the other guys who vote for us. And to their credit, if you don't vote in the primaries, they're right. Mm-hmm. If you don't vote in the primaries, they are right. You don't really have a choice unless you vote in the primaries and you vote for the person that you want. You have to fight in the primaries.
No, that's right. And a lot of it is, you got to keep in mind, like, where can they go strategically? Like, they've hit such a wall that they're actually adopting, or at least pretending to adopt, some of the things from the Bernie Sanders / progressive platform. That reeks from, especially from their point of view, where establishment Democrats do not want to do anything to threaten the people who support them, their donors. But they've gotten to such a point of just, this is where the political consciousness of their base is moving, of the whole country is moving. They can't help but at least address it. And that is a much, much different political terrain than where we were at just 3-4 years ago. Like night and day, frankly. Because keep in mind, like later Obama years, a lot of this discontent that had been bubbling up, even from some of the stuff that like kind of Trump threw his anchor on. This is something that the Democrats really didn't see coming. I think, Bernie Sanders had a really good point about Barack Obama in that he was very charismatic. He held the party together. And without Obama, without having that kind of figurehead behind all of these neoliberal policies, it's like the emperor has no more clothes, so they've kind of been backed into a corner where they have literally nowhere else to go with this argument. The whole country has turned against the kind of new Democrats, Bill Clinton model. And all they can really do is just say, we're not Trump, and we promise we're not like colluding with a foreign power that your parents are really scared of still. But,
all right. Well, let's talk about this other topic while we have a little bit more time.
Yeah.
Do you want to pop off on it, or do you want me to start it?
You can go ahead. You do it.
Which are we talking about?
Well, I kind of wanted to hit on the immigration.
Oh, go ahead.
Topic.
Go ahead. Pop off.
So I mean, y'all have heard this, and this is really outrageous. Like the ICE essentially lost about 1,500 kids, and there's a couple of things I wanted to mention that were not necessarily being talked about, and I want to say, as horrible as that is, and there has been some evidence that some of these kids were given out to child traffickers. Some of that is because of the procedures dealt with in foster care, and I literally was just like looking this up on the way here, so I was talking about it with a partner of mine, but. Some of these kids that have gotten get picked up by ICE or basically snatched from their parents, they end up going to a legit foster home, but they don't report back to the government because that's not necessarily in the procedure. So some of them, these kids who are quote unquote lost, are actually still with foster families, or they've gone back to Mexico or whatever other country that these kids are from. However, that being said, there were still a very significant number of children who were lost with like a capital L. And there has been evidence, some of them have gone excuse me. Some of them have been picked up by child traffickers, which, there's two things I want to say to that. We've been talking about Sesta Fosta on the show for the last couple of weeks, and just the absolute hypocrisy of this country. We're going to pass these policies that criminalize and make it and endanger sex workers while we have a federal agency that is losing migrant children to these predators. It's this. I mean, I really don't really know what else to say. I mean, this is America. That's all I'll say.
I mean, this is the thing that the Trump administration tried to blame on President Obama, and to be fair, President Obama did deport more people than the previous presidents before him, but the policies that are taken in place now come directly from the Trump administration. They said they were going to do these horrible, nasty, disgusting things, and what do you know? They're doing these terrible, nasty, horrible, disgusting things. It's amazing how when people try to tell you that they're horrible people, a lot of Americans did not believe them. So this doesn't surprise me, because it's not like we haven't had families split up before in America's history. From the Trail of Tears to slaves being split up from their families when they came here to America, to the Japanese internment camps that we had in America. We have a long history of splitting up your family because we can. And it's America.
Yeah.
And we have a long tradition of it. Even if you want to talk about something as current as welfare, and how if you were living in a two parent home, you wouldn't be able to receive welfare. So the parent of the mother who might be receiving government assistance couldn't even live in the home, and that was America policy. So I mean, like this right here is just another notch in the belt of America's horrible, crappy policy that does not care about human life.
All right, yeah, and I want to mention two things. One, I'm going to quote this article from The Intercept, which goes a little bit more into the weeds of how this legally plays out on the border. But I also wanted to mention, it's important to mention that there was this particular incident that happened. So one of the photos that was shared to promote this story, it was really disturbing. It was like these two kids who looked like they were trapped in what looked like a dog kennel. And what was pointed out was that when CBS used that photo for the story, that photo was from 2014. And they ended up retracting it and replacing it with something else. But honestly, I thought that was like a very potent and important teaching moment, because there's been some statuses I've seen rocking around that have basically boiled down to like, I can't believe, this is not America. I can't believe the Trump administration would do something like this, or even blaming. I saw one that blamed like third-party voters and stuff for this stuff, and keeping.
I got news.
This stuff has been going on.
That is the thing. That is now a punchline.
I got news for you. Anybody who's saying that, nope, this is America. On top of the fact, like, actually, Kyle Kulinski in Secular Talk did a piece about that specific photo that showed two children in what is essentially a dog kennel, being held at a holdover facility while the government figures stuff out. Taking down that photo, retracting it from the story, doesn't actually do the story any good, because you're acting like that there's not a story there, even though the picture's from 2014. No, that makes the story even more important. It's been going on for longer than what we thought was initially thought. So if you have a photographic evidence of these kinds of things from the previous administration, you can't just sit here, close your eyes, plug your ears, and go la 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 la. I can't hear you. You have to address it, and it continues to exacerbate the idea that when the quote unquote good guys win the presidency, when the Democrats win the presidency, and you have a palatable public figure as the president, the nation goes to sleep.
Yeah.
The nation goes to sleep. Nobody pays attention to anything because, everything's fine now. We have a Democrat in office, so things should be okay.
Well, I mean, the right gets incensed, but for all the wrong reasons. Some of them for the right reasons.
But really, that picture is still important within the grand discussion of this story because it means this story is bigger than what everybody thinks it is.
Oh, yeah. And I wanted to, here's a quote from my friend Don Ford, and he's kind of a name in the movement. He's helped do a lot of strategizing for the progressive Dem Inter movement. And it this really just wraps it up in a nutshell perfectly, this story that we're talking about. Donald Trump didn't make America an evil empire. He just doesn't care about hiding that it's true. And yeah.
Oh my God.
I saw that episode. Yeah.
I did not see that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Martin Luther King said it back in the 1960s. The greatest purveyor of violence in the world is America. And when you have international studies that says, hey, what is the number one cause to human extinction, or what's the number one threat to global peace? We're always number one. The rest of the world always believes that we're number one. So I mean,
number one.
There was a great philosopher that said, the way to tell the humanity or soul of a nation is not how they treat the rich, but how they treat the poorest among you. And these immigrants that are coming to the country are the poorest among us. And how they are treated defines how the soul of America.
I mean, even that, when we're talking about how the least among us are treated, all we have to do is take a look at how the homeless population is treated, how the how people who are addicted to drugs and harmful substances are treated, how we treat people who are part of the working homeless, who have full-time jobs. We have this cultural problem in which poverty is seen as a moral failing. And this is something that gets tossed around in leftist circles a lot, is this idea that we have to get away from the idea that being poor means you are a bad or unworthy person and being rich means you are a good or worthy person. Because honestly, with the dichotomy, it's like living in an episode of The Twilight Zone, because we have one of the richest people, allegedly richest people in the country.
He's not.
The dude's lying. He's probably broke as hell.
He is.
But we have someone who presents themselves as very wealthy, who is literally one of the most morally bankrupt human beings I have ever seen on the face of this planet. And he's being upheld as a pariah of wholesomeness and good from certain subsections of America who believe this idea that if you are wealthy, you are good, and if you are poor, you are bad. Meanwhile, I see people of my financial station and lower literally giving everything they have to other people who they know they can help because they know that help is necessary.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous. If you think that being rich makes you a good person inherently, you're wrong. You are also wrong if you think that being a poor person makes you inherently bad. It's it's a viewpoint that's completely detached from reality.
And, just to cast it, I see that so much from people who are poor, who are working class. And it's, it reminds me, I always circle back to this brilliant Futurama quote. It's Fry and Leela. They're standing in this crowd, and they're listening to some politician or somebody.
But Fry, you are poor.
Yeah, but it's show those poor people what's what. And then Leela's like, but Fry, you are poor. And it's like, yeah, but maybe someday I'll be rich. And then people like me better watch their step.
Oh, man.
Everybody in America thinks they don't look at themselves as poor.
They are temporarily embarrassed millionaires.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. Here's the thing. This is the thing that makes America scary now. A lot of people have been waking up to that reality that they're not embarrassed millionaires. They're not going to
hoodwinked. You've been bamboozled. You're not going to be rich. Sorry.
So the idea that living comfortably, just comfortably, living with some decency and integrity with the job that you have, or living comfortably, is what most Americans are asking for. That's the bare minimum that we're asking for. Yet, that's not what we're getting. That's not. And the thing that makes it angry is that you have immigrants coming to this country because they see that opportunity. The land of the free and home of the brave. They want to come to that shining city on a hill because they want that American dream. They want a piece of that. Yet we're treating them like they're subhuman. We treat them with the same dignity that we treat cockroaches. Yeah. And that's what makes the immigrant kid story so sad, because I'm like, these are kids who don't have control of staying in their own country. And if we as Americans actually cared about human rights, then maybe we'll stop the international programs that we've been doing that's destroying their countries in the first place. Maybe if we stop the war on drugs, they don't have to come from Honduras where there's massive gang violence. Maybe if we stop the war on drugs, we won't have to worry about the cartels down in Central America that's displacing people. Maybe if we stop trying to snatch resources from overseas for fossil fuel companies, then maybe the Middle East would be livable and they would have water and they wouldn't have to fight over it so much. Or maybe if we stopped the interventionism that we do by saying that we're for humanitarian, we're giving humanitarian aid, but we're bombing everywhere.
To kind of wrap it up in a nutshell, the world would be a lot better. It would be a lot better place if we could all just stop being dicks to each other.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
All right, I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. We're on every week. We post our episodes on YouTube if you want to listen to it after the fact. And I want to thank y'all for tuning in, listening to the discussion, and keep on fighting for that revolution solution.